Hello, and welcome to this first video in a two-part series on keeping your family safe if martial law is declared and forced relocation becomes a reality. I know it can be scary to think about, but staying informed is one of the most reliable ways to protect the people you love. In this series, we'll talk about what martial law involves, which rights might be restricted, and how to organize your documents, supplies, and communication plans so you're better prepared for sudden changes. It's important to grasp why this matters. Throughout history, governments have sometimes imposed martial law during severe unrest or emergencies, putting military authorities in charge and even relocating civilians. It doesn't happen all the time, but because global situations can escalate quickly, a little preparation now can give you a significant edge later. Remember, I'm not promoting fear or law-breaking, just offering balanced insights so you can make responsible choices. Sure, you've got to follow your local rules when it comes to stocking up or planning your defense, but there's still plenty you can do to keep your home safe. If you feel motivated to take concrete steps, I've tagged a few key products, like radios, document protectors, and water filters, in the video description. By the end of this video, you'll have a clear plan for gathering resources, securing your home base, and building a local support network. Now, let's dig into our first topic. What martial law typically looks like, and why getting your documentation in order is absolutely essential. When we talk about martial law, it's easy to picture soldiers patrolling the streets, checkpoints popping up everywhere, and curfews that limit your freedom to move around after a certain hour. While those images might be accurate, the specific forms martial law takes really do depend on the situation and the government's approach. Sometimes it might just mean the military's helping local police maintain order. Other times, it can be more extreme, with civil liberties suspended. In these tighter scenarios, you could see a ban on public gatherings, temporary seizures of private property for government use, and even censorship of news outlets or social media. A good place to begin is by checking your country's or region's laws. Many places have specific provisions about when martial law can be enacted, how it must be announced, and which rights remain intact. Some jurisdictions require an official declaration from the highest levels of government, while others might give local authorities a narrower version of martial law powers for emergencies like hurricanes or violent unrest. Remember, though, that in a real crisis, announcements may come quickly, and legal nuances can become murky. The key takeaway is that you should stay as informed as possible, especially if rumors begin circulating about a potential crackdown or if tensions appear to be on the rise. Keep an ear on trusted news sources, where available, but also try to tune in to local chatter from people you trust on the ground, because official channels can sometimes lag or become censored. Now, one of the first things many governments do when martial law is declared is impose identification requirements. That means you could be asked to show ID at checkpoints or even in public spaces. If you can't produce valid identification, you might be arrested or held for questioning. So, how do you prepare for that? The simplest step is to ensure that you and every member of your household has up-to-date ID and knows exactly where it is. Consider dedicating a specific folder or pouch to these items. I like to keep passports, driver's licenses, birth certificates, and any residency papers in one of those waterproof, fire-resistant folders. Because you never know if you'll have to leave in a hurry, you want it stored in a central spot you can grab at a moment's notice. Go a step further by making digital backups. Scan important documents and store them on a secure, password-protected platform. Whether that's cloud storage or an encrypted USB flash drive, you can easily slip into a go bag. People sometimes hesitate to upload sensitive documents, worried about hacking or data breaches, which is a valid concern. But if you're already using reputable encryption or a well-known secure cloud solution, it's usually worth the trade-off. Think of a scenario where your physical copies get destroyed in a flood or seized during a chaotic search. Having that digital backup is priceless. Even if you can't access it right away, you'll have recourse once the dust settles. Another set of documents worth protecting includes property deeds or lease agreements. Under martial law, officials might temporarily seize private buildings for government or military use, especially if they need space for displaced people or for strategic operations. Having your legal proof of ownership or rental agreement can help you reclaim your property or at least file for compensation when things calm down. Yes, it may feel like a minor detail in the face of a crisis, but once the emergency phase ends, there will likely be paperwork to handle for restitution or return of property. You don't want to be left empty-handed trying to prove you own your home solely by memory or personal testimony. The same principle goes for your vehicle. If you rely on a car or truck for your job or your personal mobility, make sure you have the registration and title documents scanned and secured. If a local government or military group sets up vehicle checkpoints, they may confiscate or impound vehicles without proper documentation, claiming they can't verify ownership. The more official proof you have, the stronger position you'll be in. As I said earlier, martial law can vary widely in its severity. Not every scenario will lead to forced relocation, but if it does, official stations or checkpoints may insist on seeing everyone's IDs. Children without proper identification might complicate the process, and if the government becomes suspicious that you're harboring individuals you can't account for, that can lead to serious legal troubles. So, even for your kids, if you have birth certificates, school IDs, or passports, keep those documents readily accessible. You might be thinking, this all sounds like a lot of paperwork, and I hate dealing with bureaucracy. Trust me, I understand. But think of it this way. In the confusion of martial law, the simplest administrative task, like showing a valid ID, can mean the difference between continuing on your journey or being taken into custody for further questioning. By preparing now, you save yourself heartbreak and risk later. Now that we've covered the legal and documentation aspects, let's pivot to what I call the core preparedness essentials, which include stockpiling certain supplies and forming a plan for what to do if the situation takes a turn for the worse. At the heart of any serious readiness plan is the ability to meet basic human needs no matter what: food, water, and medical care. Under martial law, you could see supply chain disruptions if roads are blocked, or if the government prioritizes official or military shipments over civilian goods. Grocery stores might sell out of staples quickly, or the military might distribute rations in a way that doesn't align with your family's dietary needs. That's why having your own stash of non-perishable food is a game changer. When you're stocking up, think practicality. Canned goods, beans, vegetables, soups, are a great foundation. They have long shelf lives and require minimal cooking. Add in items like rice, pasta, lentils, or dehydrated meals if you have the space. If you want something highly portable, consider freeze-dried packs or protein bars that you can easily slip into a go bag or suitcase. Make sure to rotate your stock every 6 to 12 months, because even canned goods eventually degrade in quality. Use the first in, first out rule. If you have a well-organized pantry, you won't waste money throwing out expired food. Water is another area people often overlook. If municipal water is cut off or contaminated, you'll be grateful you have a supply of bottled water. Even a small 1 or 2 week stash can carry you through short-term disruptions. If you have space, invest in larger water containers or barrels. Alternatively, look into water filters or purification tablets so you can safely drink water from streams, rain barrels, or other sources if your usual tap is no longer an option. Pay attention to local guidelines if martial law is declared, because sometimes governments will instruct people to boil water or rely on centralized distribution points. But you don't want to stand in a long line if you already have the means to provide for yourself. Medication and first aid supplies are equally critical. If you or a family member relies on prescription medication, say for diabetes, heart conditions, or any other chronic ailment, try to maintain an extra supply if your doctor and insurance allow it. In chaotic times, pharmacies may be closed, looted, or stripped of essential meds by panicked crowds. Store them in a cool, dry place, and keep an updated prescription list on hand. For general first aid, include bandages, antiseptics, pain relievers, fever reducers, anti-diarrheal meds, and any other over-the-counter items you frequently use. In an unstable environment, you might not have the luxury of walking into a fully stocked pharmacy. Hygiene is another factor you can't afford to skimp on. Consider how fast disease can spread in cramped shelters or relocation camps if people don't have access to clean facilities. A small box of hygiene items, soap, hand sanitizer, wet wipes, a few washcloths, could keep you from catching or transmitting illness. If you have infants or toddlers, diaper and formula needs should be planned out well in advance. Part of your preparedness should also address how you'd cope with leaving your home on short notice in case forced relocation comes knocking. This is where a go bag becomes your best friend. A go bag is basically a small backpack or duffel that contains the most essential items. A few days' worth of high-calorie snacks or emergency meals, a portable water filter or water pouches, a change of clothes, basic toiletries, some first aid supplies, a flashlight, extra batteries, a small radio, important documents, and maybe a stash of cash. Keep it somewhere you can grab it quickly, like near your bed or by the front door. If you ever have to depart in a hurry, you won't be running around searching for scattered items. You might be wondering, but how do I store all this stuff discreetly so it's not confiscated or looted? That's a legitimate concern. If martial law is declared and rumors spread that you have a significant food stock, neighbors or opportunists could target your home. In some harsh cases, the government might even commandeer supplies, saying they need to redistribute them for the greater good. Consider storing your caches in places that aren't too obvious, maybe a locked closet, or in sealed totes that blend in with other household storage. Don't go bragging about your stockpile either. The less people know, the safer you'll be from theft or scrutiny. Once you have your basic supplies figured out, your next priority is establishing a communication plan so you're not left guessing what's happening around you. One of the biggest challenges in any crisis is separating fact from rumor. Under martial law, official news outlets might become heavily censored, or they could be pushing out government-approved statements that aren't the full story. At the same time, social media might be flooded with panic and misinformation if the internet is even up. This is why having reliable ways to gather and verify information can make a massive difference. Shortwave or ham radios are a tried-and-true method for staying connected in disasters, though they often require some training to use effectively. Even a simple battery-powered AM/FM radio can help you keep in touch with government announcements or local broadcasts. Some communities establish low-power emergency channels when standard internet and phone services fail. If you can't find anything locally, you can sometimes pick up regional stations that might give you broader coverage. Keep extra batteries on hand, or get a hand crank or solar-powered model so you're not reliant on the grid. Mobile devices are still useful if cell towers remain functional. Group messaging apps or local forums can help you share intel on which roads are blocked, where food distribution is happening, or whether checkpoints are up at certain intersections. Just remember that under martial law, authorities could monitor phone lines and internet usage more strictly. So if you're sharing sensitive information, be cautious. Don't discuss private details like the exact location of your stored supplies over an insecure channel. Neighbors and friends are another valuable source of both information and moral support. This is where building a modest community network can be a lifesaver. Maybe you know a retired nurse who lives nearby. She might be willing to help with first aid or medication questions if the local clinics get overwhelmed. Or perhaps there's someone who used to be in law enforcement who can give you tips on staying safe if things get heated in your neighborhood. Even simpler, if you and a neighbor both have vehicles, you might agree to share rides if forced relocation is announced, especially if one of you doesn't have enough fuel or space for everyone. Consider having a quick neighborhood meeting well before any crisis hits. Obviously, this depends on how well you know and trust the people around you. You don't have to reveal every detail of your preparedness plan, but you could discuss forming a phone tree or text group for emergencies. That way, if word comes that martial law is about to go into effect, you can verify it with one another, share real-time updates, and coordinate. The more you pool resources, the less likely you'll end up in a desperate situation. And if you're forced to relocate as a group, it's much easier than going it alone. On the flip side, be mindful of who you trust. Not everyone is honest or has a community-minded spirit. Sometimes people will exploit a crisis to scam or steal from others. Use your best judgment and consider limiting what you disclose unless you're sure about a person's character. If you sense someone is poking around, fishing for details on your stockpile or your finances, be cautious. You don't want your preparedness efforts to paint a target on your back. Part of effective communication also involves planning for how your family will stay in touch if you're separated. Suppose you're at work when the government announces martial law and your children are at school, while your spouse or partner is running errands. Cell lines might be jammed or unreliable. In that situation, having a designated meetup point, maybe the home of a close friend or a specific landmark, could save you a lot of anxiety. Everyone knows that if communication fails, they head to the agreed location and wait there. This strategy works best if you've practiced it or at least talked it through a few times so there's no confusion. Now, I realize all this planning might feel heavy and time-consuming. Still, it's important to reiterate that you don't have to go from zero to a fully fledged readiness plan overnight. Chip away at it, gather documents one weekend, Stash some food and water the next. Talk to a trusted neighbor soon after that. The idea is to weave preparedness into your everyday life so it doesn't become an all-consuming project that scares you or drains your finances. With that in mind, let's wrap up what we've covered in this first part and lay out how it sets the stage for dealing with forced relocation specifically. I hope you're feeling more empowered than overwhelmed at this point. We've covered a lot of ground, from what martial law might look like to why having valid documentation is crucial, all the way through the essentials of stocking food, water, meds, and hygiene items. We also explored the importance of building a go-bag and the value of community ties and reliable communication strategies. These aren't small tasks, but they're tasks that can absolutely change the outcome for you and your loved ones if you ever face the unpredictability of forced relocation. Now, a quick reminder for you. Check the tagged products in this video if you want direct links to some of the most useful gear, like emergency radios, good quality water filters, and recommended document storage solutions. That's part of my call to action. Because while knowledge is power, having the right tools on hand is equally vital. Sometimes a well-chosen item can mean the difference between being comfortable or struggling under tough conditions. In the next part of this series, we'll dive deeper into the actual process of forced relocation. What to do if someone knocks on your door and says you have to leave within the hour, how to handle checkpoints or government-run shelters, and how to maintain morale and emotional resilience if you find yourself living under very strict conditions. We'll even address the steps you can take to rebuild once martial law is lifted or scaled back. But for now, pat yourself on the back if you followed along and started thinking about how to adapt these insights to your own family. The biggest hurdle is often the initial decision to prepare, rather than assuming disaster won't happen. By taking this step, you're already well ahead of the curve. Before you head out, I want to invite you to share this video with friends or family who could benefit from it. The more people in your circle who understand these basics, the easier it becomes to coordinate if a crisis actually occurs. And if you found this content helpful, let me know in the comments. Hearing your thoughts, experiences, and tips can inspire others and help refine our collective knowledge. That's all for part 1. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to stay informed, stay alert, and keep your loved ones close. I'll see you soon for part 2, where we'll roll up our sleeves and tackle the specifics of evacuation logistics, security considerations, and long-term recovery under martial law. Until then, stay prepared and stay safe.